Our support for Ukraine will not waver. NATO will not be divided, and we will not tire. President Putin's craven lust for land and power will fail, and the Ukrainian people's love for their country will prevail. Democracies of the world will stand guard over freedom today, tomorrow, and forever. The West was not plotting to attack Russia, as Putin said today. And millions of Russian citizens who only want to live in peace with their neighbors are not the enemy. This war is never a necessity. It's a tragedy. Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia. Never.
Hey there, Patriots. This is True Outlaw Patriot coming at you with another one. The video that I'm dropping is about some news that is coming through fast. Okay, with the talks between America and Russia and Ukraine, and possibly sometime soon the war between Ukraine and Russia will be put to an end, and will, in my opinion, from the stuff that I came across today, and I'm going to show you that information, I think that will bring a new peace between America and Russia. Okay. The first clip that I showed you, you seen the way Biden was talking. Very adamant on Ukraine's side. Okay, now, there are people on both sides of the spectrum, okay, that feel that Russia has every right to defend themselves, just like Ukraine, that Russia started the war, that Ukraine started the war. But as we see, okay, and I'm going to show a video of something that Donald Trump said, that this whole situation could have been handled, okay, a very different way had the right person been in the driver's seat, for lack of a better term, in order to speak to all parties and put an end to this war. And that's something that Donald Trump has been saying when he was on the campaign trail. Okay, that had he been president, this war would have never happened, just like the war in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas would have never happened. But leave it up to the Democrats, leave it up to Biden, okay, to see the war go through, because quite honestly, just like Obama, they don't have the skills in order to bring peace between two countries and say, listen, another bullet doesn't have to be shot, another bomb doesn't have to be dropped. Let's sit down at the table and figure this out. No, Biden decided to just speak to Putin over the phone, okay, whereas Trump basically has spoken to Putin and to ZALINSKY, has sat down with ZALINSKY, and now he's on his way in another day or so, or I believe in a week or so, something like that, to sit down with Putin in person and talk this through. Whereas ZALINSKY is not happy about that because he feels that all parties need to sit down all together. Trump's answer to that is basically, you had enough time to do that, but you didn't. And I agree. For the past 3 years, all that, even though Biden could have sat down with ZALINSKY and Putin, no, Biden's, how can I say, Biden's treaty, I'm not going to say treaty, that's a poor word to use, Biden's excuse, okay, or Biden's way out, or Biden's solution in all this was, let's just keep sending Ukraine tens of billions of dollars and keep putting out that America has to support Ukraine and that all of America supports Ukraine. And that is far from the case when it comes to all of America supporting Ukraine, number one. And number two, all of America didn't vote for this war and didn't vote for taxpayer money in the tens of billions of dollars to go to Ukraine. Okay, while the whole time, another answer that Biden had was to basically try and cripple Russia. And I'll show you in this video clip right here. If anybody will remember, if you don't remember, now you're going to be reminded. But there was really no no middle ground for Biden to step in and try to talk this out. If you look at it from the outside looking in, it looked like, and we all know, not that it looked like, Biden actually favored Ukraine over having peace talks between Putin and Zelensky. And that's just the bottom line. But now, as of today, already the mainstream media is trying to put a spin on all this, and I'll show you a video on that in a second. And they're basically, they're going to try to turn this on its ear. And in my opinion, it's like, you know what? Like Trump said, you had 3 years. In my opinion, you guys had your chance. You had your chance. Now you guys are going to have to sit back and watch how the big dogs sit down and work things out, with or without Zelensky at the table. Everybody's complaining that, you know what, Trump is going to meet up with Putin, but Zelensky, you know, is not going to be at the table. Well, excuse me, but Biden was always at the table with Zelensky. Where was Putin's invitation? And it's not like I'm taking Russia's side. It's just that if Biden and Zelensky really wanted this war to end, they could have easily been doing what Donald Trump is about to do. But they didn't. Which in my opinion proves that, you know what, this whole thing was one-sided. But before I continue, I just want to thank all my new subscribers and all my subscribers here on YouTube and on Rumble. So don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, and pass the channel around. If you can help support the channel, there's a link in my description to my Cash App and my merch store. With that being said, I'm going to play this clip real quick. Okay, it's a YouTube short or whatever it is. And listen to what Biden says. And this is where a lot of people need to understand. Did Biden and Zelensky really want peace? Or did they want this to keep dragging in order to just keep funneling money into Ukraine, regardless, okay, of how many lives it would have cost? Check this out.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it. If Russia invades.
Okay, you heard that. Instead of him sitting down with Putin and Zelensky at the time, no, he threatened to do something, okay, threatened to shut down the Nord Stream pipeline. Nord Stream 2, I should say. And then you heard what the woman said. How you're going to do that if Germany is involved with that? Because what a lot of people don't understand is that Germany and Russia are the ones that build the pipeline. Russia had like 52% influence on building it. Germany had the rest. But yet, on the video that I played a few days ago with J.D. Vance speaking in Munich, right after that, a German official, I don't know if anybody's heard, but he started making his little speech afterwards and broke down in tears during his sob story. Okay, he basically, which I find very odd, but he basically mentions Zelensky's name as if Zelensky is this I don't know, angel in a box, for lack of a better term, something like that, And it made me wonder if Germany and Russia were partners in the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Okay, and I'm not trying to go off track here, just bear with me, I'm putting all this together. And Biden wanted to fund Ukraine to beat Russia, but Biden, you just heard him say how they're going to take care of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. I'm confused, because you would think that Germany, okay, would actually be a little bitter about that and have a say-so, but instead, now that Trump is president, J.D. Vance goes and talks in Munich, that German official basically talks after J.D. Vance, talking about, his speech about, basically, I guess they're all afraid of what J.D. Vance was saying. In my opinion, what J.D. Vance was talking about was basically for the European countries to get their boots off their citizens' necks he just nonchalantly happens to mention Zelensky. And it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder what is going on. So here you have the left in the Democrat Party, the left in Ukraine, talking about we have to give them money. Please give us money. We got to fight Russia. But Trump comes on in and says, you know what? This is what I want. I don't want anybody to die. Okay? That's just the bottom line. We have to put an end to this. And we can do this if the right person sits down and talks to both parties. But now one party, one side, which is Ukraine, they're upset because Trump decided now we're going to do this without you. Well, isn't that the way Biden was doing it? Biden was wheeling and dealing with Ukraine without Putin at the table. I mean, anybody can look at this any way they want, but the facts are the facts, and that's exactly how it went down. But the difference is that even though Trump is going to sit down at the table with Putin and talk about this to bring peace, which is why I headed my title and my thumbnail, because I truly believe this is going to be the road to peace between America and Russia. It basically is showing one side, in my opinion, okay, I'm just saying, in my opinion, that one side wanted this to continue and another side is like, it should have never happened in the first place and we have to put a stop to it. So, without trying to drag this out too much, let's get to the video clips and I'll explain some more. Here we go.
Would you give Ukraine weapons
I was
and funding?
impeached by a crazy woman named Nancy Pelosi.
But the question here is, would you give Ukraine weapons and funding if you were elected?
I would sit down. Let me just put it a nicer way. If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
How would you settle that war in one day?
Because I'll meet with Putin, I'll meet with Zelensky. They both have weaknesses and they both have strengths. And within 24 hours, that war will be settled. It'll be over. It'll be absolutely over.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I don't think in terms of winning and losing. I think in terms of getting it settled so we stop killing all these people and breaking down this country. Now,
can I just follow up on that? You said you don't think in terms of winning and losing. Mr. President, can I just follow up on that because that's a really important statement that you just made there. Can you say if you want Ukraine or Russia to win this war?
I want everybody to stop dying. They're dying. Russians and Ukrainians. I want them to stop dying. And I'll have that done. I'll have that done in 24 hours. I'll have it done. You need the power of the presidency to do it.
Welcome to the NewsHour. President Donald Trump today denounced Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky as a dictator as he tried to pressure Kyiv to accept the terms of a deal to end the war with Russia. It comes a day after Mr. Trump falsely claimed Ukraine started the war. Ali Rogan has the latest.
Today, a war of words between two supposed allies. President Donald Trump lashing out online against Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. In a scathing paragraph filled with falsehoods, Trump called the wartime leader a dictator without elections, and that he better move fast or he is not going to have a country left. Elections in Ukraine have been delayed since April of last year due to the Russia-Ukraine war, which enters its fourth year next week. Trump's comment stirred a global reaction. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who's hoping to be re-elected this Sunday, said calling Zelensky a dictator is, quote, dangerous and false. Trump also accused Zelensky of duping the U.S. into sending billions of dollars in military aid.
Unfortunately, Trump lives in this disinformation space.
The post came just hours after Zelensky publicly criticized Trump for repeating Russian talking points. In particular, the notion that Ukraine bears responsibility for Russia's invasion. And just yesterday in Saudi Arabia, talks between the U.S. and Russia resumed, a stark shift in a U.S. policy that for years sought to isolate Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right here. Okay, there's a couple of things that I want to point out. One thing in particular. Number one, Trump saying that Zelensky is a dictator. If anybody knows what had happened, the elections weren't delayed. Okay, the elections in Ukraine were canceled. That's number one. Number two, one of the reasons, okay, rumors going around that one of the reasons why Putin won't deal with Zelensky is because Putin does not recognize Zelensky as Ukraine's leader since they did not have an election. Okay? A lot of people will come out and say, well, you know what, they're at war, they couldn't have an election. Here's the thing. If anybody remembers, Biden was sending money to Ukraine, and in some of those package deals, they were sending money, and I did a video on this months ago, of where they could take money out and give it to citizens of Ukraine to help them, number one. Number two, which I found to be very, very disgusting because of what's going on here in America, was so that they can help stores stay open. One in particular store, in the video that I put out, was a woman that owns a scarf store. So they needed to give her money in order for her to keep her business open so she could keep selling scarves. What does that all mean? What it means is that, yes, Ukraine is at war with Russia, but not all of Ukraine is engulfed in this war. All you're seeing is the battlefield. You're not seeing all of Ukraine. Which means that if people in Ukraine, on another side of Ukraine where there's no war, if they're going about their lives, they're still out there shopping for scarves, that means there could have been an election. It's not like the whole country is being bombarded. It's just one area. But for some odd reason, the elections were called off, put on hold like they just said. No, if you ask me, I think the reason why Donald Trump calls Zelensky a dictator is because Zelensky knew this, and instead of Zelensky letting there be an election, because I don't know, maybe somebody with a cooler head would have gotten elected and maybe sat down with Putin and put an end to this war 3 years ago, but that didn't happen. Especially with Biden on Zelensky's side. So Trump came out and said what he had to say. Another thing about this video. You hear right here in this section right here, and I'll play it real quick. Okay.
And just yesterday in Saudi Arabia, talks between the U.S. and Russia resumed, a stark shift in a U.S. policy that for years sought to isolate Russian President.
Okay. You've seen the way they panned over of Marco Rubio and them sitting at the table. And she put her words in. Now, why didn't she, the reporter that is, whoever, why didn't they give a little more contrast of what was said at that meeting that came out yesterday? I mean, I know, when I seen it, I was like, okay, so what was said? What's going on? But of course, this is PBS. We all know they're left-leaning to the max. Okay? Always wanting, you know, everybody's hard-earned taxpayer money as donations to keep their leftist propaganda going. But that's neither here nor there. I'll digress on that. But why don't we go to the video and see what Marco Rubio had to say during that meeting so people can see a little more of what's really going on. Okay, now the video that I played of Trump saying that he didn't want anybody to die, that was a year ago. That's how a leader talks. A leader that's in the middle. Not a leader like Joe Biden that decided to take Ukraine's side, knowing that Ukraine, in all honesty, at least from what I know, we're not really allies. Okay, but he took one side. And he was telling America, we got to stand behind Ukraine. We got to defeat Putin. Whereas Trump comes in and says, I don't want anybody to die. This war has to stop. But now the difference is, like I said, is that now Trump is like, you know what? We're going to sit down, me and Putin, we're going to put an end to this war. And since Biden and Zelensky and the powers that be, once again, you just heard on the video, the German chancellor, okay, is taking Zelensky's side. Again, I have my thoughts on why they're not going after you. I don't know, Biden, because of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. You people try to put it together. I have my ideas. I'll keep it to myself for now. But I just, like I said, I'll mention it again. I find it very strange that Germany and Russia had a deal with that pipeline. Biden says he's going to shut it down, which it was shut down. And instead of Germany, I don't know, just having a little hissy fit over it, no, they decide to go on Zelensky's side. Strange. But like I said, I have my ideas. I'll leave that for another video, hopefully. But let's see what Marco Rubio and them we're talking about. Here we go.
We've agreed on 4 principles that I think are important. The first is that we're going to appoint our teams respectively to work very quickly to reestablish the functionality of our respective missions in Washington and in Moscow. For us to be able to continue to move down this road, we need to have diplomatic facilities that are operating and functioning normally. The second point is that we're going to appoint a high-level team from our end to help negotiate and work through the end of the conflict in Ukraine in a way that's enduring and acceptable to all the parties engaged. The third point is to begin to work at a high level as well, to begin to discuss and think about and examine both the geopolitical and economic cooperation that could result from an end to the conflict in Ukraine. Obviously, we have to see that conflict come to a successful and enduring end in order for that to be possible. And the last thing we agreed to is that while our teams are going to be working on all of this, the 4 of us who were here today, the 5 of us that were here today, are going to remain engaged in this process to make sure that it's moving along in a productive way. The first next step is working through our respective teams at the diplomatic side, just to ensure that our diplomatic missions can function. There's been a series of reciprocal actions taken over the last 10 years that have really diminished our ability to operate in Moscow, as an example, and they would argue their ability to operate in Washington. We're going to need to have vibrant diplomatic missions that are able to function normally in order to be able to continue these conduits. The second is a high-level team, including those who are experts on these topics of the technical side, to begin to engage with their side on parameters of what an end to this conflict would look like. And on that front, obviously, there's going to be engagement and consultation with Ukraine, with our partners in Europe and others. But ultimately, the Russian side will be indispensable to this effort, and so that process will begin. And then the third is...
Okay, before I let him continue with the third, I'll go back just a little bit. That part he said right there about Russia going to be indispensable. I don't know how to take that, but this is just the way I see it. I think what they're basically saying is this. It's already gotten to the point that too many lives have been lost. Too much money has been funneled through Ukraine, American taxpayer money. Okay? And it's going to get to the point that, you know what? We're going to sit down and make deals with Russia. They're going to be indispensable. Don't worry about it. You sit to the side. We'll take care of it. And now Ukraine's going to have to listen to what basically America says, Donald Trump, and says, you know what? Either you're going to make this deal or you're going to be on your own. But we are going to proceed to have peace agreements and basically start dealing with Russia. Now listen, people. Like I said, I am not a person that supports Russia. I support America first. But if you think about it, because when he says the third thing, this is where, you know what, I'm just going to play it, and then I'll finish my sentence of what I want to say. Check this out.
Is, together with those other two, is beginning to engage in identifying the extraordinary opportunities that exist should this conflict come to a acceptable end, the credible opportunities that exist to partner with the Russians geopolitically on issues of common interest and frankly economically on it.
And there you go. Basically, 2 superpowers sitting down at the table and dealing with each other geopolitically and economically. I mean, think about it. People will come out and say, oh, that Trump is siding with Russia. Now they're going to say he's a communist, whatever the case is, yada, yada, yada. But yet, leave it up to Biden and Zelensky They're canceling elections in Ukraine, and they're funneling tens of billions of dollars into Ukraine, which, by the way, Zelensky also admitted that out of the over $200 billion, he has only been able to see $75 billion of that. He cannot account for the other $125 billion or whatever the case is. And people are going to look at this and right away start bad-mouthing Trump. Now, I mean, everybody's going to have their own opinions on this. If I'm wrong, leave it in the comments. Like always, you're more than welcome. Tell me how you see it. The way I see it is that I think that Trump and Putin always wanted to have peace between each other when in Trump's first term. Because like Trump said, had he been president, the war would have never happened in Ukraine. But now that both sides are so invested in it, that it's not anymore about, oh, that Zelensky says, oh, I got to sit down with both of you. No, you had your chance with Biden. You could have had these talks with Biden and Putin, but you didn't. Biden just wanted to talk to Putin over the phone and decided to invite Zelensky to Capitol Hill in Congress and sit there and give this grand speech about, oh, that if Americans have to boot up and go fight for Ukraine, they got to do it. Really? Does anybody see all this? And I'm sure you do. At least I know my subscribers do. And if you're new to the channel and you agree also, join the channel, leave me a comment, give it a thumbs up. To all you lefties out there that watch this, I know you're going to totally disagree, and that's fine. You can totally disagree. You have your right to disagree. But if you disagree, that means you want this war to continue. You don't want peace, especially when you have a superpower like Russia and a superpower like America. Call it what you will. Me personally, I'd rather have the peace between Russia and America and tell Ukraine, you know what? It looks like you're going to have your election now. And it looks like you guys are going to have to pretty much just sit down, shut up, and listen to what we have to offer. Plain and simple. Because the way I see it, the way Trump wants to do it, maybe I'm wrong, like I said. I think he's ready to say, you know what? Either you agree to this deal or you're on your own. No more American money, no more American weapons, and definitely no American troops on the ground in Ukraine fighting against another superpower. But let's listen to what Donald Trump has to say. Here we go.
Do you have any message for Ukrainians who, after 3 years of fighting, might feel betrayed or disappointed at not having a seat at these initial talks in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think I'm really disappointed in what's happened. I've been watching this for 3 years. It's a war that would have never happened if I was president, and I've been watching these people being killed at levels that you've rarely seen, not even close, since the Second World War. And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their sides. You have those magnificent golden domes that are shattered, will never be replaced. You can't replace them. A whole civilization has changed because of what. So when they're worried about not being seated, you mean somebody that should have gone in and made a deal a long time ago? You could have made a deal. This is one that could have made a deal. There was no talk of this during the Trump administration. Putin would have never, ever done it. And I think I have the power to end this war. And I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way. And President Biden, in all fairness, he doesn't have a clue. What he was so bad for this. It was so bad, so pathetic. It's so sad.
How would you counter the perception, because Russia's pushing for this, obviously, they don't really hold true elections, that would be a capitulation of some sort. How would you guard against potentially Russia installing a puppet government? And then finally, how would that new election have an impact on getting Zelensky to sign the rare earth minerals deal?
Look, you have leadership, and I like him personally. He's fine. But I don't care about personally. I care about getting the job done. You have leadership now that's allowed a war to go on that should have never even happened, even without the United States. Look, we had a president who was grossly incompetent. He had no idea what he was doing. He said some very stupid things, like going in for portions and all of the things. He made a lot of bad statements, but he's grossly incompetent, and I think everyone knew that. This is something that should have never happened, would have never happened. And I used to discuss it with Putin. President Putin and I would talk about Ukraine, and it was the apple of his eye, I will tell you that. But there was never a chance of him going in. And I told him, you better not go in, don't go in, don't go in. And he understood that. He understood it fully. But I'm only interested, I want to see if I can save maybe millions of lives. This could even end up in a World War III. I mean, to be honest with you, you've been hearing now Europe is saying, well, I think we're going to go in and we're going to go. All of a sudden, you're going to end up in World War III over something that should have never happened. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so you heard that. Now, one thing I'm gonna pull from this, and I hope everybody's still with me. I know the video is probably a little lengthy, but you know, you have to go out there and do some research. Excuse me. The 4 areas that Russia wants, okay, well, actually, let's put it this way: the 4 areas that Russia wants, Zelensky is fighting against. No, we don't. You can't have it. Okay. Zelensky, not too long ago, maybe last week or the week before, something like that, if anybody's heard, Zelensky offered to give rare earth minerals to the United States if they continue to support them. Actually, not even continue to support them. If they give Zelensky basically security. I'm thinking once he leaves, he needs to be protected. For whatever reason, he's willing to give up, make a deal where Ukraine will give Trump rare earth, not Trump, the United States, the rights to their rare earth minerals. Here's the thing. Those rare earth minerals are on the 4 pieces of land that Putin wants. So how does that work? Does anybody see this? This is such, for lack of a better term, I'm going to use it. This is such a clusterfuck of a war that Trump knew this a while ago, and he was like, you know what? I would have made deals with Putin for him not to go in. Ukraine would have been safe. There would have been no war. Nobody would have died. Nothing would have been bombed. But you leave it up to Biden, who, by the way, if anybody remembers, his son was doing business in Ukraine. If anybody forgets that, with Burisma. Okay? If anybody forgets that Hillary Clinton, during the 2016 election, was saying that there was Russian bots in Ukraine helping Trump steal the election. It's just funny how this war is going about it. Biden could not sit down with Zelensky and Putin to put an end to it. All these things are on the table. You have reporters asking about rare earth minerals. But yet, here comes Trump, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to sit down with Putin. Zelensky had his chance. It's too late. And then the reporter throws a dig about, pay attention now. Okay, when she came out and said, how can you trust Putin for having a fair election in Ukraine? And it's like, why would you ask that question when it was Zelensky who canceled the elections in Ukraine? Donald Trump is right. This war should have never happened. Why it happened is anybody's guess. Okay? They're saying that you heard Biden say that Putin started the war, he invaded Ukraine. Trump is saying that Zelensky started the war. The only people that know are the only people that know who really started this war are the people that wanted the war, in my opinion. Again. And if Trump could come in and put an end to this war and make a deal with Russia geopolitically and economically, in my opinion, that's a good thing. As far as Ukraine, just by ZALINSKY asking for security, and he's willing to give up something in Ukraine to the United States that, if Russia wins, technically doesn't belong to Ukraine anymore, it belongs to Russia. That right there should tell people that this whole damn thing, this whole left-sided agenda is crooked. Straight up crooked. From the beginning up until now. Plain and simple. And this is why I titled my video and the thumbnail what I did, because I truly think that, you know what, Trump in his first term keeping everybody at bay was a good thing. He's had 4 years to sit back and watch all this, and lest people forget, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, when you're the president of the United States, you're pretty much stuck in the loop for a very long time, whether you're in office or not. That's just a given. They have to do that. They have to keep these presidents, I'm not saying 100% with everything, but with a big portion. Trump will have his inside, connections, whatever you want to call them keeping him updated, especially before he gets elected. There's people on the inside letting him know exactly what's going on. This is why I feel that Trump is so positive, saying, you know what, once I get in, I'm going to put an end to this war. But I'm also going to make peace with Russia. So like that, there's no more wars like this. So like that, we don't have to worry about another Ukraine happening with another superpower, and then we're stuck in the middle of it because they think that we owe them. Like ZALINSKY, everybody keeps saying on the left, and ZALINSKY keeps saying that we're allies. I've never heard of us being allies with Ukraine. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my head's been in the clouds the past, 20, 30, 40 years. Who knows? But it's like, I just don't understand how the left-wing media keeps spinning the narrative on this, and yet when you sit back and you look at everything, you're like, wait a minute, none of this makes sense on your side. This makes more sense. And it makes more sense for Trump to make peace because this war should have never happened in the first place. Not that Trump is in love with Putin, okay? Because Trump said it himself. They both have, Putin and ZALINSKY have their weaknesses and their strengths. And he doesn't want anybody to die on either side. And yet people say that Trump's going to mess everything up. If you ask me, Trump is going to bring peace between America and Russia and start doing dealings that is going to project itself onto other countries that are going to do the same, and there's going to be more peace. Unlike this war that's been funded with tens of billions of American taxpayers' money for one half of the country in Ukraine to be fighting, while the other half, their businesses are going, and 90% of America is suffering because our president at the time on our side was milking us dry to fund his war machine in Ukraine. So I think this is the right deal. I think that Trump makes a deal with Putin. There's peace between America and Russia. Good things happen. No more dying in Ukraine. They deal with what they got to deal with, and we just keep it moving forward. And that's it. No wars. That's just the way I see it. But anyway, that's what I got for you. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, pass the channel around. And if you can help support the channel, there's a link in my description to my Cash App and my merch store. So remember, people, stay vigilant. Keep praying for each other, keep praying for the women and the children, pray for this country, pray for your enemies, pray for Donald Trump, and remember, keep praying for all the children that they brought across the border that are missing. Peace.